Robert Turnbull, building text and image extraction pipelines. And I'll let you explain who you are and where you come from and all that sort of stuff.
Thanks very much.
That's not the Bible, is it?
No, it's not.
Oh, that's all right.
It's related though. I'm going to come to that actually. All right. Just one moment. I'll get this plugged in. It's wonderful to be here today with you. It's great to be with people who are passionate about research data and gaining new insights into data. So yeah, I'm really excited to be part of the summer school today. Let's see. Okay. All right. Well, hi everyone. My name is Robert Turnbull. I'm a senior research data specialist at the University of Melbourne at the Melbourne Data Analytics Platform, or MDAP. At MDAP, we collaborate with researchers from across the university in data-intensive research projects. Our vision is that when you take modern data science techniques, such as AI, and combine them with deep domain expertise in other academic disciplines, you can accelerate the discovery of knowledge and drive impact in society. My academic background is as a researcher into Arabic biblical manuscripts from the Middle Ages. I'm interested in computational tools to study historical texts and artifacts. This can be in natural language processing in Arabic or Greek and other languages, but also in computer vision and processing images. Some of these interests will come through in some of the case studies that I'll be presenting today. But I hope that whatever research field that you're interested in, or your colleagues, that you'll be able to find something of interest in this presentation. Today, I'm presenting about Collectra. This is a software tool that we're building at MDAP for anybody to be able to design a pipeline to extract information from a collection. The goal is to make it much easier for researchers and institutions to turn images or documents into structured, searchable data. This is one of the work packages as part of the Enhanced Analytics project. That's part of the ARDC Community Data Lab. We've just started this project over the last few months, so it's a 3-year project, so we're just at the very early stages, and just this week we're at the point of hiring a research software engineer. So when I'm going to explain what the software is going to do when it's complete, as well as, but we've already made quite a good head start over the last few months, so I'm also going to be able to show you a few case studies of how we're using the software right now. So you partly have to imagine what it could be from where it is now. Okay. Well, and at the end, I'd like to experiment with a bit of interactivity through some worked examples that you might be interested in using and how you might be able to use this software when it's ready. So as I'm talking about Collectra, I'd love for you to please think about a data set that might be similar to some of the things that I'm talking about here today, and that you could imagine using this software to help analyze as part of your research. And so at the end, I'm going to call out for suggestions, and then we'll find one, hopefully, that we can work with, maybe 2 if there's time. And then if you can describe the data to me, perhaps you can email me an image, and then we can talk through how to build a pipeline to be able to extract data from images like that. So if you're interested in that, think about examples, and then we can work out how to bring that together at the end. So a little bit experimental, but we'll give it a go. Well, first I want to explain. For today we're going to I'm going to explain where the idea for Collectra came from. Then I'm going to talk about how the software has been designed and the kind of features that you can expect when it's ready. I'm going to go down into a little bit more detail about the kinds of AI tools that are going to be available in the software. So that might be interesting, even if you don't never end up using Collectra. Just knowing more about these kinds of tools that you can use in other contexts might be of interest. And then we're going to talk through a few examples of how we're using it in humanities contexts. So let's start with thinking about how it all started. Well, in 2022, our team at MDAP collaborated with Joe Birch, who's the curator of the Melbourne University Herbarium. The Herbarium at the University of Melbourne has 170,000 specimen sheets, like you see here on the right. This is a specimen collected by Joseph Banks in 1770. These specimen sheets typically have a label with information about the species, the date, the collector, the locality, and other fields. Worldwide, there are about 400 million specimens held in 4,000 herbaria around the world. They're a treasure trove of biodiversity data, but the information on these labels has to be digitised first. And at the current rate, that's going to take decades. So that's why we created this software. So here's the one from Joseph Banks. Here are all the herbaria around the world. So that's why we created Hespi, a pipeline to take images from of a specimen sheet and to run it through several AI models to extract information. So first it finds the component, the different components of the sheet. So it finds the labels, it finds the swatch of colours, finds other extra. Can you see my? Oh, we can't see my my cursor over here. I might just get a.
I think there's a pointer.
Yeah, is there a pointer here? I saw one up here. That's great. Okay. All right. So maybe we'll just go back a moment. So the first thing, there are all these different components of the sheet. So we've got what we call the primary label here. We've got a ruler. We've got the actual specimen over here. We've got the swatch. We've got these printed database labels after it's been entered into a database. And we've got extra primary labels here. And this one happens to be mainly empty. So the first step of the pipeline is to identify all these different components using an object detection model, and I'll talk about that in more detail in a few minutes. Then after we've found, at the first stage we're only interested in the primary specimen label, because that's the one with all the information on it, and that's relevant for putting in the database. So we extracted that out, and then first of all we wanted to find out what kind of how the data was presented on the label. Was it handwritten? Did it come from a typewriter? Was it printed? Or was it mixed? So we had an image classifier tell us what type of text was entered on it. And then we also tried to extract all the different fields on it. We tried to extract a box around the date, a box around the locality, a box around the species, the genus, and all these sorts of things. And we tried to read those with different models. So we had an OCR model, a handwritten text, so optical character recognition model, which is great for printed text, a handwritten text recognition model, which is great for handwritten texts. But sometimes the OCR model would be better on handwritten text than the handwritten text model, and sometimes the other way around. So we tried to combine all those. We then compare with the database of known entities of species in Australia, of each genus in Australia. And then we tried to combine all that with a large language model, and then that would be outputted to a database. And you could visualize it. So we're extracting the primary specimen label, extracting all the different fields, and then outputting the information in a spreadsheet, but also a way that could be visualized on a website, so the user could be able to see what was extracted and why. So this is the Hespi project. We worked on this in 2022 and 2023. It was quite successful. It was the cover story of a bioscience journal over a few months ago. It was also, we wrote an article in The Conversation about it. And we're working with herbaria around the world to be able to use this software in their workflows. And that's ongoing. But after we completed Hespi, we were approached by Museums Victoria to see if we could adapt Hespi to work with their collections. So we tested Hespi on a Graptolite fossil specimen, and it worked surprisingly well. So Graptolites, I only learned this recently through the collaboration with Museums Victoria, but they're an ancient marine animal, much older than the dinosaurs. They existed from all around the world for over 150 million years, from around 500 million years ago to about 320 million years ago. And their fossils not only give us biological information, but they also tell us about the geology of that period in the planet's history. So Museums Victoria have 12,000 Graptolite specimens that they need to digitise. And the plan was to, or they wanted a pipeline just like Hespi, but for use with this particular collection to read these labels. But what we didn't want to do is just to create another one-off pipeline for Museums Victoria that would be bespoke for, just for this one particular collection. What we wanted to do was to create a tool to be able to generalise the building of these kinds of pipelines for any kind of collection and for lots of different kinds of research data. So that's why that's our logo for Grapto. That's what we're calling the pipeline for extracting information from Graptolites. But we're building Grapto differently. It's going to be built on Collectra. This is a general pipeline builder to extract collection data. And we're very grateful for the ARDC to include this as a work package in the Enhanced Analytics project. We've been, not only do they make the project happen, but they're also giving us all the support we need in project management to make sure it's successful. Collectra can be the starting point for building any kind of pipeline, just like Hespi and just like, I can't click this one. Just like Hespi, just like Grapto, and it could be used for, you could build it when it's ready to be able to build a pipeline from scratch so that you can, or you could take an existing Collectra workflow and customize it for the kinds of data set that you're interested in. That might mean fine-tuning the AI models or taking components of it and reusing it and adapting it and extending the pipeline. So let's talk a little bit about how the software is designed. Each task in the pipeline is like a Lego piece. It might be detecting objects or reading texts, classifying images, or using a large language model. You can arrange these tasks like Lego blocks in a network graph. So you take the data comes in as input, that's one node in the graph, and that goes through some kind of task. So that could be one of these AI models, and that outputs a certain number, that produces a certain number of outputs. They could be images, they could be text, they could be something else, and then they can be used in other components of the pipeline, and you can chain together as many of these different components, tasks as you like, to be able to extract really quite complex information from data sets, and we'll go through a few examples. And we're going to curate, at the moment you can just build this using, in terms of text, it's quite simple. I'll show you how we're doing it at the moment, but eventually you'll be able to create it graphically by dragging and dropping different tools into a user interface and connecting the lines between your data goes through this particular tool, this particular task, this AI model that outputs, that creates two outputs, and then you can chain them together graphically. So you shouldn't have to know code to be able to create these pipelines and to customize them. Secondly, Collectra works with bundles. So we package the results of the pipeline in a directory that's compatible with the research object crate specification, which is a big part of the Enhanced Analytics project. All the training data from all the models and all the predictions are all in the same format, that means that because all the predictions of the same format as the training data, once you take a prediction from an AI model, you might correct it manually to make sure that it's exactly correct. Then you can just add it to the training data and click retrain, and then you can to fine-tune the model without having to wrangle the data set into the same format that trained the model. Often the predictions are always in this different format to the training data, but if they're all the same, then you can easily just keep on adding new items to your training data, click retrain, and then suddenly you have a model that's fine-tuned for all this extra data that you're curating. Collectra creates a graphical user interface to allow you and your users to quickly edit and correct any predictions for the models to ensure that they're correct. And these corrected versions can then be exported to a database if you need to import to some kind of system that you're using. As I said a moment ago, there's an easy way to fine-tune the AI components. So in the graphical user interface, there's a button. If you want to train any of the different tasks, any different AI components of your model, you've supplemented your original data set. You just click the fine-tune button, and it'll retrain based on this updated data set. And finally, Collectra can help you cluster your results and group similar items together. For example, in Hespi, we might cluster all the specimen labels together to find ones with a similar layout. You just select the component that you want to cluster around, and then you click the cluster button and all the clusters appear visually, and you can explore them and select groups of them. Now the clustering also helps with annotation. So if you want to fine-tune the data set by annotating manually a whole bunch of images yourself, what the clustering can do is it can sort your data so that you see the most diverse examples first. That's a method called furthest first traversal. So by doing that, so let's say you just want to, you only want to annotate the first 50 images. You want those 50 images to be a good representation of the diversity in your data set. So if you can create these vector embeddings first that we use for clustering, and you can search them. I want to find, you start with one, and then you find the one that's furthest away from that particular image, and then you annotate that one. And then you find the one that's furthest away from both of those two, and then you annotate that. That gives you a far more efficient way of annotating a small number of images, and then retraining, and that gives you the best kind of representation you can have from a limited sample. Well, let's talk a little bit in detail about what some of these modular tasks are and how they could be added in a Collectra pipeline. The first is object detection. That's when you have an image and you want to find different objects in it by perhaps putting a bounding box around each of the items. The simplest option is when you just have one type of object that you're interested in. An AI model can hunt through the image and place a bounding box around the sections of the image where it thinks it's found that object. First, you need to annotate some images yourself, and then you can train the model. And we typically use pre-trained models that are trained on huge data sets, and that means you only have to fine-tune them on a minimal number of examples. So this is an example that I'm working on now for a discovery project with the researcher Matthew Champion at the University of Melbourne. He's interested in studying the history of hourglasses, or he calls them sandglasses. As part of this project, he wants to find hourglasses in historical artwork. So of course, you can look for an hourglass in the metadata for databases of images, but the metadata is never complete. So instead, and it's often incorrect, so instead what we wanted to do was to build a simple pipeline using Collectra that has just a single task, which is an object detection task to find hourglasses in images. The start of the pipeline is as basic as you can get. It's just a single image which we're calling input here. Then it goes through the object detection class, which is their task, which is there in green, and then outputs bounding boxes. I'll just go back a moment. Outputs bounding boxes around each of the hourglasses in the image. I just realised I think I'm one slide ahead, so perhaps I've been looking at the wrong slides and pointing to the wrong ones, but hopefully that's okay. All right, let's. I'll look over this slide. All right. Now we started with an initial data set that Matthew Champion has been curated as part of his discovery project. He had 109 images of hourglasses, so we thought we used those. We annotated those in the GUI to be able to identify them. We trained a model, but it wasn't quite accurate enough. I would have thought 100 images would give us a good starting point, even though it's quite small. But the problem is there's hourglasses in historical artwork are just so diverse, and often they're obscured, and often they're hidden, which is part of the design of the artwork, which is that death, or sometimes it could mean that death is always looming, but sort of slightly out of view. And so sometimes they're obscured by branches, sometimes obscured by people's hands, those sorts of things. And that's so it's quite difficult for the object detection model to be able to learn from these examples. So we needed to have more examples. So we hunted through Wikimedia, and that gave us 253 more images of hourglasses. But that still wasn't enough, so we went to the Marburg Picture Index, and that gave us 450 images. But with metadata for hourglasses, but only 358 of them were useful for us. Then we went to Google Arts and Culture. So this is, again, looking at the metadata. The metadata should have given us 360 images of hourglasses, but only 59 of them were useful for our project. Lots of them were from the game Prince of Persia, where it had, or it could have been an hourglass figure with a woman in a dress, or it could have been an hourglass galaxy, all these things we needed to exclude. So we only had 59 usable ones. But that, by combining all these examples, we had, I think, around 700 images altogether. And then we trained a model, and that was finally good enough to make some accurate predictions. So we then downloaded 10,000 images from the public domain image archive, and we used Collectra to hunt through them to find hourglasses, and we found 33. And then we manually verified them to make sure that these were actually hourglasses. And then we added those to our training data, retrained the model, and then went bigger. We went to Google Arts and Culture and downloaded 28,000 images of historical artwork, and that gave us 303 extra images of sandglasses. So all up, we ended up with 11,000 images of sandglasses that have been manually verified, and these are what Matthew Champion can use as part of his research. And we also hope to extend this further, meeting with a representative of Google Arts and Culture in a few weeks. And hopefully we're going to be able to use this model on all the images in Google Arts and Culture to search through tens of thousands of images to find as many hourglasses as we can. And hopefully we can use this as an example for Collectra in the future for even more complex workflows in partnership with Google. So what we did was we found all these 1,100 images and we clustered them. So this is a kind of example of the clustering feature in Collectra. So here we found, this cluster was of portraits with hourglasses featured. Then one cluster was of hourglasses in real life. Here's a cluster of woodcuts with hourglasses, and here's a small cluster of hourglasses with skulls. And these can all be used by the researcher to be able to investigate how the hourglasses were used in different contexts. Now, object detection isn't just about finding one particular type of item. It can also find several different types of items at the same time. So, for example, with for the Graptolite project, we're interested in extracting the primary label, but also the handwritten data, and classifying these separately. And each of these can then be used for different stages of the pipeline. So just to show you what I mean, this is the example of handwritten data up the top, and then the primary label at the bottom. And you can have as many of these as you like. So in the Collectra GUI, you've got your object detection task, and you drag and drop as many of these types of objects that you want to extract, and then you can use those for different stages in the pipeline. You also might want to orientate these bounding boxes. So typically object detection is just a bounding box that aligns with the borders of the image, but it doesn't have to. So this is an example of finding boats which are all orientated in the image. So you might have, so one of the things we're interested in for Graptolite is there's arrows on lots of the different specimens. We want to work out which direction the arrow is going in, and we can use an orientated bounding box for that. The next task that you could use in Collectra's classification. So we talked before about detecting whether an image is handwritten or typewritten or printed or all those sorts of things. You might want to have a certain number of categories that you want to classify each image with. So the classification is another module that you can drag and drop into your pipeline. You might want to do landmark detection to be able to find different landmarks or on your particular image. So it might be this is typically used in pose detection for human beings. So I was working with researchers with architecture, building and planning to see how construction workers be able to see where their arms and shoulders were and those sorts of things on footage of construction sites. So you can use this for pose detection, but also you might want to just detect the corners of the book in your image, of the corners of the page in your image, and then do some kind of transformation to correct the perspective. That's what you can do with landmark detection. There's also segmentation. So that's where you want to classify each individual pixel in your image. So here's an example. A few years ago, a friend and I used an object detection model to detect characters in Greek papyri. So for each character, we predicted a bounding box. So here's a bounding box around the upsilon. And what we might want to do is to segment all the pixels which have ink in the, and so that we can use the segmentation model for that. And the last task that I'm going to talk about is an LLM task. So that could take an image as an input or text as an input, and then it comes together for an LLM. Then you design a prompt that you want to instruct the LLM how you want to use these inputs, and then it'll output some kind of text. So as an example, for the Graptolite pipeline, we might have an extracted bounding box around the field where the person's written the genus, and then we might want to, and we've also got, just in case that was wrong, we might want to give the whole label all together. So, and then you put those together, those two images together, you give it to the LLM, and outputs the text of the genus. So this is how it looks like in the text form of GUI, but in the text form of Collectra. But eventually this will be in the GUI, so you don't have to write the code like this. But even just it's quite simple. So you should be able to. Or hopefully you can get the sense of how it works. So these are the two inputs for the task. So we're giving it a primary label and also the genus. And then here's our template that we're giving to the LLM. So you give it some kinds of instructions, you give it examples. The more examples, the better with the LLM prompts. And then we give it one of these inputs. We just put in curly brackets, and Collectra knows to substitute this with the particular image. And then we give it the image of the genus. So it's a very, very efficient and easy way to write a prompt, and it's going to get even easier when it's in a GUI. So those are the building blocks that Collectra has at the moment to be able to create a pipeline to extract data, and those are going to be we're going to add more over the next 2 years. And it's also extensible enough for a research software engineer in your team to be able to create a new task that's custom for your particular workflow. So it's going to be extensible to be able to for other people to build these kinds of components. And if they're shared with the community, then they can be used in lots of different pipelines. Hopefully build up an ecosystem. So here's an example of how we've used Collectra just at its infancy stage. We're working with researchers at the University of Melbourne on the manuscripts of Livy. Now, Livy was a Roman historian who wrote at the time of Augustus. We're working with Andrew Turner and Julia Torello-Hill to analyse the transmission of Livy. Julia's from the University of New England, I believe. The textual evidence from the manuscripts of Livy is being collated into. So here's an example of a manuscript, I believe written by Petrarch, copied of Livy, and this is an example of the footnotes. So it's in an edition that was written 100 years ago. So all the textual data is contained in the footnotes like this. So our pipeline is first we scan the images. It's not part of Collectra, but we scan the images, and then we use Collectra to identify the footnotes using an object detection model. So those are extracted as their own separate images. Then firstly, we wanted to convert these just to some kind of textual representation. So we used a large language model to convert this image into Markdown format. The Markdown format's great because it's just plain text, but it can also represent bold and italics. And those are important for the footnotes because the different parts of the apparatus in the footnotes use italics and bold to represent different things. So we wanted to capture that information. So the large language model at first extracted the Markdown in Markdown format, and then we wanted to convert it to the text encoding initiative, which is a structured XML representation of the text, which is the standard for manuscript studies around the world. And the important thing about the text encoding initiative is that we can go straight from that to using it for other downstream analyses, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So that was the ultimate goal, to get it into some kind of text encoding initiative compatible format. So this is the workflow. I know it's just a whole lot of text, but I'll just to illustrate how it works, how to build a pipeline just using this text format. So we started with an object detection model up the top. So it has as an input just the image of the page, and we want to output the apparatus image, and we just use this YOLO object detection model, which YOLO stands for you only look once. It does both the classification of the bounding box and finding the bounding box at the same time, so it's quite efficient. And So to train this, we had to give it several examples where we'd annotated the bounding box ourselves. So that was the first step, and that extracted the footnotes, and then we could easily check with the GUI that we have just by clicking through that it extracted all the bounding boxes correctly. And in the few cases where it was incorrect, we just manually adjusted it a little bit. Then we wanted a new task, which is here, called the Markdown converter. So it takes an image, it takes this apparatus image, and then converts it into Markdown. Now, what we also do is to have these other inputs. These are just files that we pre-prepared manually to use as examples for the large language model. We could have just written these in the prompt over here, but we thought it was easier to extract them as different files, and it was so it was easy to pull into the template. And the template here just instructs the LLM about how we want the data, how to expect the data to look in the image and the kind of format that we were interested in. And finally, it has instructions here to take the Markdown representation and convert it to text encoding initiative, and it also has examples in the prompt. And that was quite successful. It's extracted all the footnotes and converted it to TEI, and we're using that at the moment to come up with a digital edition of these first 5 books of Livy. So this is a mock-up of the web page that we're going to be using, and you're going to be able to see the footnotes here on the side. And we also used the text encoding initiative data to be able to do analysis of the textual tradition by using phylogenetics. So phylogenetics is a tool from evolutionary biology where you're seeing the small changes in DNA to extract the transmission history of a virus or of the history of the organisms. So you can also do the same with texts. So each time a scribe copies a text, there's going to be small changes, and you can use phylogenetics to be able to build a family tree or a stemma of the manuscript witnesses that show you the transmission history. And we used the TEI encoding representation with software that does the phylogenetic analysis for texts to come up with our own stemma, our own tree of relationships of the witnesses from Livy, and it quite closely matches what was already known in the literature about the manuscript tradition of Livy. So that's one example of where we used Collectra in a humanities context. How are we going for time? Plenty of time? Yeah, great. A second example is for text and text verse. Now let me just find my notes for this one. Now, over the last few decades, scholars have come up with hundreds of test locations in the New Testament to look up every single Greek manuscript with, and to see what variant readings are written there. And for the New Testament, there's thousands of surviving manuscripts just in Greek alone, let alone other languages. And scholars have put together all that data in volumes like this one, and like what you see up here. I don't want to tell you how expensive this was for me to buy as a student. But they're all locked away in these printed editions. I'm not sure, and you can see the sort of format of the data here. It's all just numerical tables. It's quite useless in print format, but this was started in the 80s, but sadly, a lot of this data, as far as I know, when I'm speaking with the institute that put this all together, it's no longer available in digital form, even to them. The only representation that we have remaining is in books just like this. So it's important for their institute, as well as for the rest of the world, to be able to extract this information and to have it in some kind of digital format so that you can use this rich data set that scholars took many decades producing. So what we've done is create a pipeline in Collectra to, first of all, identify all the different components of the page. So the reference, the initial Greek text, the text of the particular reading, the label for this particular reading, and also the sigla for each of the manuscript witnesses that attests to this particular reading. So we've created a Collectra pipeline to do that, and what we also need to do is to have a whole lot of quality control stages to make sure that each of these numbers was read correctly, that they're incrementing in the right way so that it never goes backwards. That's a sign that the OCR was wrong. That the numbers actually correspond to actual manuscripts to be expected in this volume. That's another check. That the number of manuscript witnesses at the end agrees with the number on the page. So you can see here the number of the page The number of witnesses is also recorded here, and we extract that too and make sure those all line up. But once you do all those quality control checks, you can be quite confident that the data is accurate, and you can manually verify the things that you can't do computationally. But so we've done that for at least one of these volumes on the New Testament book of Ephesians, and that's given us a data set where we've been able to use all this manuscript evidence and do some kind of statistical analysis. So here is each of the hundreds of witnesses of Greek witnesses to Ephesians is here on this graph. We're able to show how much it agrees with the Byzantine text, which is the predominant text of the New Testament in the Middle Ages, how much it agrees with the Byzantine text over time, and you can see how it increases from the early days, which is quite different to the Byzantine text. So over time, as the imperial authority from Constantinople imposed its standardization of the text of the New Testament, you can see how over time the manuscripts agreed more and more with this Byzantine text. We're also working with the institute that created this data set to present this digitally on a website. So scholars could be able to find all these variant readings with all the witnesses and be able to download it in the text encoding initiative format so that you can be able to use it for all different kinds of statistical analyses like what we've done. Now, those are the two examples that I've presented that I wanted to talk about today. There's some other examples I could talk about if we want to, but I thought it'd be more interesting at this point, to throw it over to you to see if there's any examples of data sets or collections or anything that you would be interested in that you could imagine using a tool like Collectra to study. And so I thought about we could bring up a whiteboard and we can try to design how a particular pipeline could work, and we could even see about writing it up in text format, but that's probably boring. So let's just talk it through and we'll see how we go. And then hopefully we've also got time for question answers at the end. So I'll throw it over to you. As I've been talking, have there been any data sets that you're interested in, that you could imagine fitting into a kind of pipeline like this? And while you're thinking that, I'm going to get a drink of water.